Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Pan Future Podcast. I am your host, Sean. Today is Saturday, March 4th, 2017. Got a lot of stuff this week, so we're going to get right to the news of the moment. The first item, just a quick hit, and also tied into our farming and food theme of recent. GMOs, that boogeyman that people trying to sell you things like to scare you with. Another reason not to be afraid of GMOs or to watch out for that non-GMO label. You might be buying food that is less nutritious. Yes, indeed, a lot of people are finding products, particularly cereals. The non-GMO versions are not as full of vitamins and nutrients and things that you might need. For example, grape nuts, when the non-GMO version of grape nuts has no vitamin D, B12, or A in it at all, and the riboflavin also nearly disappeared. Not only that, the package went from 32 ounces to 29 ounces, so you are paying more for less. And that's all I got for GMOs this week. On to some other news for you. Also, I guess, food-related. And also job-related, and robots are going to take your jobs related, sort of. This year, Wendy's is intending to install 1,000 self-serve kiosks in its restaurants. Now, these are not actually robots. They're just kind of a touch screen you walk up to and point at the pictures of the things you want. Other restaurants have done this. I've heard that McDonald's has a few of these. I have actually seen these in a Jack in the Box in Denver when I lived there. So they're not brand new, but the fact that they're rolling out 1,000 of them is pretty impressive. So it's let it be a reminder too that the coming age of robots and artificial intelligence and automation doesn't mean an R2-D2 or a C-3PO looking robot. It could just be a touchscreen instead of a person. It's replaced a job. It's probably replaced several jobs because it works 24 hours a day. It doesn't need to be trained. It doesn't take time off. It doesn't need benefits. It doesn't get sick. So whether it's a robot or just a touchscreen, you will see, I think this year, maybe this year and next, you're going to start to see automation in places you haven't seen it before. And whenever there's a new technology, there seems to be sort of an exponential curve where it just starts to creep in and you hear about it and then you see a couple of things and then bam, it's everywhere. We're starting to ramp up the speed, I think. And now, it came from outer space. Space news this week. In 2018, NASA is planning to launch a mission called the Solar Probe Plus. The spacecraft will get within 4 million miles, 6 million kilometers of the sun. Just for comparison, we are about, on average, 93 million miles away, and even Mercury, as blasted by the sun as it is still 35 million miles away from the sun. 4 million miles is incredibly close. This probe has a couple of tasks before it. One is to get a better look at the surface of the sun and the atmosphere of the sun, which have a bit of a mystery going on. The surface, called the photosphere, is not as hot as the sun's atmosphere, which is called the corona. The photosphere is only about 5,500 degrees Celsius, but the corona is 2 million degrees Celsius. So we really don't know why the surface is so much cooler than the atmosphere above it. Second task for this probe is to study how solar wind gets its speed. The solar wind, the stream of charged particles being blasted off the sun in all directions, travel at about 1,000,000 miles an hour, but we do not know how they get going so fast. Another third aspect the mission may be able to accomplish is to further study why and how the sun emits occasional high energy particles, solar energetic particles, which are a danger to unprotected astronauts and spacecraft. One of the lead researchers on this project, Eric Christian, says researchers have tried to figure out these mysteries from Earth, but the trouble is we're 93 million miles away. The distance makes things get smeared out in a way that makes it hard to tell what is happening at the sun. So flying that close obviously has some enormous challenges. This craft will have a 4.5-inch thick carbon composite shield, which is designed to withstand temperatures outside the spacecraft of 1,370 degrees Celsius. So the probe will also have special heat tubes, thermal radiators that will radiate the heat that hits the shield into open space so it doesn't get close to the instruments. Hopefully, if everything works, the instruments will stay at room temperature. So, 2018, we will launch something. I say as in NASA and all the really smart people there. We'll launch a probe that will get a very close look at the sun. I do not see in the article here when it will actually arrive at the sun. They're going to launch it in 2018. Not sure how long it will take to get there and to start sending data back, but keep your eyes open for that. And that is your news of the moment. Into the main segment we go. On this week's show, we get to stretch out further into the future and get into some things that might make life on a generation ship headed to the TRAPPIST-1 system possible. Even short of such a lofty goal, these are technologies and new techniques in food production and farming that can make our situation here on Earth better now and in the near and far future. This will cover at least the next 2 episodes, starting this week with vertical and urban farming and 3D printing. Next week, we will delve into cell-cultured food, meat, and other food products grown in a lab. That is laboratory, not Labrador Retriever. I would not want anything grown in a Labrador Retriever. That joke is for you, Tim. On the topic of far future food, as I mentioned last week, but getting another nod here, GMOs and gene editing technology will be necessary. Imagine creating a strain of corn that can grow in the desert Southwest or in the soil of Mars. Imagine creating a tomato that produces all of the vitamins you need to consume. I'm not sure something as extreme as growing in Martian soil is possible, but we will have to find out. Some projections about our future society suggest that by 2050, roughly 80% of the global population will live in urban centers. Getting food to people in large cities right now can be a challenge. Is vertical farming a solution? Vertical farming is just that, going up instead of out to access the area needed for growing crops. This is a concept I've been interested in for a long time, all that city of the future kind of stuff, not just for farming, but in general. I think we've done a poor job, at least in the United States, of building up rather than out in our cities. Remember, from a few shows ago, a rough estimate is that it takes 1 acre to feed one person for a year. 1 acre is a little smaller than a football field, American football, minus its end zones, or with the end zones, a football field is about 1.3 acres. And more numbers I'll throw out is that an acre is 57,600 square feet, or 5,351 square meters. My house is on a third of an acre, and imagining an area 3 times the size of what I see out my window right now is a really big area. If you haven't stood on a football field recently, you should. TV doesn't really give you a good perspective as to how much area an acre really is. Then multiply that by 300 million people in the US or 7 billion in the world. To imagine an extreme version of vertical farming, consider the Willis Tower, formerly the Sears Tower in Chicago. It encloses 416,000 square meters, nearly 78 acres of area. And this is where that future architecture would come in. Uh, I'm not suggesting we farm in the Willis Tower. What I'm suggesting is that all of our cities should be made out of buildings that tall. Um, I think we could do a lot to reduce urban sprawl and make multiple different uses of this. It's not just going to be office space. Vertical farming and related technologies offer potential solutions but are not without problems and challenges. As with many things, it's likely to be a combination of practices that offers the best solution in the future. As we have already cultivated much of the arable land on Earth, one way to increase food production is to go up. There are a number of systems being used and tested now, and you can even buy some to start a business or try some out at home as well. Even a simple herb garden grown under a light in your kitchen is an example of the technology we're talking about. There are variations of this technology that use cube systems, hydroponic trays, nutrient delivery systems allowing growth with no soil, and there are people who have designed systems to use warehouse space, stacked shipping containers, rooftops and reserved floors of tall buildings, pods or shelf-like systems attached to the outsides of skyscrapers, and more. The primary drive to use this type of system is to shrink the footprint of your growing area. In this type of setup, you also maintain control over every growing environment aspect, ensuring maximum yield and eliminating loss or inconsistency due to weather or pests. This also means that your growing season never ends. You can grow year-round. If there is enough vertical farming in the future, land currently used for farming could be returned to a wild state or reforested, aiding in carbon sequestration. These types of systems I can also imagine being ideal for space stations and generation ships. If you can grow crops without soil, that eliminates the need to ship dirt into space. Shipping things into space is very expensive. I believe the last time I heard it was something like $80,000 a pound. So shipping a bunch of dirt up there for your farming is not very practical. If you have tight control over the environment, you can reduce the danger of not having enough food. I also think that socially, for society, for civilization, it would be a benefit to having more green space in cities, even just to have cleaner air and something nice to look at. Um, for some of you out there, if you work in a cubicle farm, wouldn't it be nice if you could take a break and stroll through the garden that is on the 40th floor of your building? I think that would be pretty cool. There are limitations and potential roadblocks, though. Office building space is typically very expensive. Converting many floors of a building to indoor farming could be too expensive. The energy efficiency of these systems can be widely variable as well. If your local power utility uses coal to make electricity, you may be doing far more harm than good with all those grow lights. And different systems use different amounts of water, so growing crops in a place that struggles with water supply versus shipping food in from elsewhere may not be efficient. If you were to design a building from scratch, however, using things like transparent solar panels for windows and small turbines mounted on the edges of the building, I imagine you could offset energy needs. Zero carbon footprint buildings are being designed and the tech is being developed, and incorporating some level of farming into new building designs might be easier than adapting old buildings. Another potential disadvantage is in what you can grow. Of the systems available now, most seem to be growing lettuce and other greens, herbs, radishes, carrots, and other fairly short plants. No one is growing corn, raspberries, or fruit trees with these yet. Still, vertical farming will likely be a part of the long-term solution. Another aspect of technology that I think will continue to influence our future food is 3D printing. We're not to Star Trek replicators yet, but there's a lot of research in this area. I've talked about printed food before, but there are a few points I want to bring up now in relation to our future food needs. Dutch industrial design student Chloe Rutzerveld has made 3D printed biscuits. They sort of look like buckyballs, if you know what a buckyball is. If you don't, go look it up. Uh, Infused with seeds and spores. After about 5 days, you get a biscuit infused with plants and mushrooms, having used the biscuit as part of the soil. The idea behind this and its use seems to be sort of a compact growing system and a self contained system. So instead of needing to plant a field full of whatever and harvest a bucket full of mushrooms, you do sort of an on demand salad and biscuit system that can be stored in a smaller space or carried in a smaller space and just used as needed. There is also work being done to bring 3D printed food to the space station and to airline food. One benefit here is that you could save space by only needing to bring compact raw materials along with you, and then you make your meals on demand. 3D printing can also be a way of incorporating healthy, but to most people unusual ingredients into food production, like algae and insects. You use the 3D printing technology to turn whatever ingredients you have into something that's more familiar, more palatable in one way or other, but you can use a wide variety of things to get the nutrition into your food. The U.S. military is researching these kind of systems, and they could be used in areas where malnutrition is a problem. Imagine a situation where people have a lot of a staple crop like rice. Lots of food, but lacking in nutrition. Use the rice as a base material and use 3D printing to infuse concentrated nutrition into the food. You can also get creative with the 3D printing and keep a variety of flavors and textures available, even just from one simple base of rice and some added ingredients. These are just a few of the more advanced technologies that will shape our food in the future. Next week, cell culture agriculture. You won't believe how many times I stumbled over that trying to record this segment. And lab-grown meat and dairy products. All right, there's your show for the week. Thank you so much for joining me again on this episode of food stuff. I hope you're all hungry now. Go have a snack. And if you want to check stuff out about the show, blogs, and contact me and my music and the Facebook and Twittery things, go to the website, panfuture.org. From that point, you can do all of the things. Yes, all of the things. And once again, I will talk to you again in the future. Cell culture, agriculture, cell culture, agriculture, cell culture, agriculture.